Assalamu alaikum wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, inshallah, today we will have Bab al-Basira, the chapter on insight, from Manazil As-Saa'ireen, and from al-Umda we will have Bab man la yujzi'u daf'u az-zakati ilayhim, or the chapter on those who are not eligible to receive zakah. So first, the Bab al-Basira, the chapter on insight, and that is the 54th station out of 100 stations. We are up to 54 now. And this is the segment on the valleys. And Sheikh Rahimahullah, Imam al-Harawi Rahimahullah said, باب البصيرة قال الله عز وجل قل هذه سبيلي أدعو إلى الله على بصيرة أنا ومن اتبعني. Allah Almighty said, say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, ala basira, with insight, I and those who follow me. I and those who follow me. So al-basira, and you will notice, as I said before, you will notice that the concepts do overlap. The 100 stations, the concepts in the 100 stations do overlap, but it is never a complete overlap. In other words, you may hear things that are familiar because we may have talked about them in the chapter of tafakkur, reflection, for instance. You may hear things that are familiar. Next time when we talk about al-firasa, which is spiritual astuteness, to be able to have like the power of good prediction, the spiritual power of good prediction, good telling of things apart, and so on. And you may have heard last time some things that are familiar in the chapter of hikmah, wisdom, because they are interrelated, because they overlap. But the thing that is important to point out is that this overlap is never complete, and each one of those concepts does shed a different light on a somewhat different concept. So we have to pay attention so that we could get the benefit out of the different perspective that each one of those stations gives us, and the greater insight and knowledge that we can acquire by understanding each one of those stations. So al-basira comes from al-basar. Al-basar is your sight. Basar means sight. Your eyesight is basar. Al-basira is the basically tool with which you see, which is your eyes. So, but al-basira is a little bit more than al-basar. Al-basira is basically the inner sight. It is the insight. Inner sight is the sight that sees through the outer surface. The inner sight is the sight that sees through the outer surface, sees a little bit deeper than the outer surface. And people have different capacities of seeing inner meanings, of learning lessons from phenomena and incidents, events, things that may seem so ordinary, mundane, routine to everyone else. Some people have this ability to see through the outer surface, and we will come back to it and talk about it more. But generally speaking, the basira, the difference between al-basira and al-basar, although they come from the same root, is that al-basar is the eyesight. It is the sight that sees, the forms, the images, the shapes. Al-basira is the sight that sees meanings beyond the forms, the images, the shapes, the mundane routine and events and so on. It's the sight that sees beyond that. So that is al-basira. when you see, like, you remember before when we talked about the different types of causes, and we talked about efficient, material, formal, final causes. There are 4 different types of causes, and this is basically a philosophical, logical classification, but it is a valid classification. Certainly with some modifications. We don't accept the conclusions of the philosophers, even if sometimes, we don't always accept the conclusions of the philosophers, even if we sometimes use basically their vernacular, their lingo, their language. So when we say, remember when I did this one time, like I, knocked on or banged on the wall, and I said that just doing this, you have 4 different causes here. You have the material cause, which is the wall itself and the nature of the material of the wall, because had I banged on dough or water or like some other material, it would have not produced the same effect. So the fact that this is a wall is relevant. It is not irrelevant. It is a relevant fact to the final outcome. So it's called the material cause. My very banging like this is the efficient cause, right? That's the efficient cause. But then we can come back and talk about, the efficient cause. Is it really me, or is it finally Allah? Because even the energy that I'm producing here and everything that is happening here is by the creation of Allah, not just the permission of Allah. Don't we know that? Don't we know that the a'mal are not only permitted by Allah, they are created by Allah. Created. So qadar includes creation. Qadar includes the knowledge of Allah, the preceding knowledge of Allah, and it includes the will of Allah, the mashi'a of Allah. It includes also the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just that Allah allowed me to do this. Everything that happened here when I did this was created by Allah. So we can always come back and say, is the efficient cause, am I really the efficient cause? Is my banging really the efficient cause? Certainly it is part of it. I am, or at least as far as I am responsible for it, I am part of it. At least as far as I'm responsible for it, and I am responsible for my actions. And it was a willful action because I could have desisted before, the action. I had the ability to desist, superseded by Allah's ability. But anyway, so consider that this is the efficient cause, the material cause, and then we talked about the formal cause, right? And we said the formal cause is what? The fact that banging on the wall produces that effect. The very fact, that formula, that law, that universal law, the universal order that Allah created, that Allah inculcated in this universe. Whether it is like physics, chemistry, whatever. The fact that, when you add H2 to O, that produces H2O, water, and, who said that this would happen this way? Who said that when you bang on the wall, it produces this effect, but if you bang on your hand, it produces a different effect, or on powder, water, this produces a different effect? That's the formal cause. Okay, so then people who have basar, they may not pay attention to any of that stuff. They just see like someone banging on the wall, and that's it. They saw banging on the wall. That's they're as limited to that. People who are a little bit more intellectual, they will look deeper into the sort of the efficient cause and the formal cause, and someone who had studied physics will be able to tell you a lot more about the various phenomena around you. That's why physics is very intriguing and very exciting to study, because it tells you a lot more about the very basic phenomena that happen around you. And so if you can imagine someone who has a PhD in physics will see a lot more than we see in the things, whatever things happening around us. So we'll see a lot more. But they are limited to at the end of it, they are limited to what? The formal cause, which is the law. But they don't ever look at the final cause. Who created that law? Where did it come from? And the important thing that they never look at is why. So they can only examine how. That's the formal cause. How? How does it happen? Why does it happen? It seems to be, all of it seems to be very end-oriented. Everything seems to be very end-oriented. And they fail to see why. Even though the ancient philosophers have always recognized that there has to be a why here. There's got to be a why. Everything is basically moving. Aristotle, for instance, said that everything is moving in wonderment of the final cause. So there has to be a why. The end, the meaning, the tellus, there has to be, which is the teleological argument, the tellus, the meaning, the end, there has to be a why. They don't look at this. They don't examine this. You don't do any of this stuff without basira. That is why Allah said in Surah Al-Rum, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. But most of the people know not. He said, they don't know anything. They know not, But then he said يعلمون, and that's the beauty of the Quran. It's just like, so لا يعلمون and يعلمون. It seems contradictory, but he wants to tell you that whatever it is that they know is basically worthless. لا يعلمون, they don't know. They know, and then the Quran said ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Most people don't know. That's it. Full stop. The ayah actually ends there, and then it says. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا. They know the exterior of the life of this world. وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. But they are concerning al-akhirah, which means what? The final one. Al-akhirah means the final one. And it is not a coincidence that it means the final one. The end. Regarding the end. Ultimate end. They are completely heedless. Hum ghafilun. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also called them blind. Because if you're really distracted by the efficient and material and the formal cause, even the formal cause, even if you have a PhD in physics, but but there you stop. For many people, they are oblivious to all the causes. They see someone banging and that's it. But if you have a PhD in physics, you may be a little bit better. But keep in mind, the believer who sees that everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know better than the person who has a PhD in physics, because he was able to see through all of these. Even if he's not seeing the details of the formal cause, and he doesn't know about the details of things, but he is able to see that there is a final cause, that there is a meaning behind all of this, purpose behind all of this. But Allah described them as blind when Allah said in Surah al-Haj, أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارُ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. Have they not traveled through the earth? Have they not traveled? And travel is important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us here. You want to walk around, move around, like travel, see, pay attention. While you're doing this, pay attention. Have they not traveled? فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. And then they would have hearts with which they intuit, with which they understand or intuit. قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. And if they did not even travel, didn't they hear? I mean, if they did not travel and see things firsthand, didn't they hear about them? أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار, for certainly it is not the eyes that get blinded, but ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور, but the hearts in the chest that are blind. Certainly the eyes get blind as well. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that it's not the eyes that get blinded, it's the hearts that get blinded. He's saying that the blindness of the eyes compared to the blindness of the hearts is completely negligible. I mean, so what if someone can't see with their eyes when they can see with their hearts? What will they miss out on? Some things in the dunya, certainly some of the aesthetics that they will miss out on in the dunya and so on. But that's it. But if they're not blind in their hearts, they did not miss out on anything. Because eventually in the hereafter, and keep in mind that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks in this language and He says that they don't know, they are not blind, this is all true. Because if your heart is not blind and you did not miss out on the hereafter, you did not miss out on eternity. If you missed out on the dunya and many things in the dunya, you did not miss out on much. Because like we always said, mathematically, divide anything by eternity and the result is what? Zero. So you did not miss out on anything in this case, because it's zero. Because the dunya is zero. Divide 70 years that you will live in the dunya by eternity, the result is zero. You will live 200 years, divide that by eternity, zero. You'll live 1,000 years, divide that by eternity, zero. Okay, so in this case, that is what basira is about. Basira is about the inner sight. It is about the sight that sees through the outer surface. It is about the sight that basically detects the inner meaning, and that is the most important type of sight that we should have. And then the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala said, al-basiratu ma yukhallisuka min al-hayra wa hiya ala thalathi darajat. Insight is that which rids you of bewilderment. It is of 3 levels. Al-basiratu ma yukhallisuka min al-hayra. Insight is that which rids you of bewilderment. And that's one of the definitions they gave to basira. One of the definitions that they give to basira is that whatever that gets you from out of the darkness into the light, that you're lost, you're bewildered, you're confused until you have basira. And once you have basira, then you're not lost anymore, you're not confused anymore. You could see through things, you could see the meanings behind the outer surface and so on. But there are certainly many definitions of al-basira, and as long as you understand the concept and you understand the gist of it, then you should be able to appreciate the different definitions the mashayikh had given to it. Ibn al-Qayyim, for instance, rahimahullah, says al-basira nurun yaqdhifuhu Allahu fil qalb. It is a light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throws into someone's heart, or places into someone's heart, by which they can see the truth with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent His messengers. They can recognize the truth with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent His messengers. I would say that, there is a particular verse that is very beautiful in Surah Al-An'am, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and I think that if you can apply basira to this verse, you could really figure out what basira in different realms and in different regards and in different respects means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-An'am, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا لَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا لا مبدل لكلماته وهو السميع العليم. What does that mean? وتمت كلمة ربك, the word of your Lord has been fulfilled. صدقا, in truth. وعدلا, and justice. And the justice. لا مبدل لكلماته. No one will alter, no one will ever alter His words. وهو السميع العليم, and He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. كلمة ربك is everything around you. Everything around you all of the things around you are manifestations of the names of your Lord, the manifestations of glory and rigor, the manifestations of compassion and mercy, the manifestation of knowledge, the manifestations of hikmah, all the hikmah around you, all the magnificence that you see around you in this universe, these are the manifestations of the designer, the creator, the maker of all of this. So everything around you are just manifestations of his attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are all by his word. Kun fayakun, be, and it is. And the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are two different types of words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are the statements of Allah. That's why Allah said, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ, and the word of your Lord has been fulfilled. صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. Sidqan refers to his statements. His statements are all true. وَعَدْلًا, injustice, refers to his decrees. His decrees are all just and all orderly. What are the differences between his statements and decrees, and how can we have basira in his statements and his decrees? Because his statements and his decrees is pretty much everything. That's everything. Other than him, Azza wa Jalla. But there is no difference between his words and him. There is a difference between the creation and him, but his word is of him. So how do we have insight into the statements? What are the statements of Allah? What are the statements of Allah about? He tells us about the unseen. He tells us about ourselves. He tells us about this universe that is seen and the unseen. He tells us about these things. He told us that is sidqan, in truth. He tells us about these things in truth. So when it comes to the universe, whatever he tells us about the universe, then we accept it. And we look for more details, and you could look for more details. He told us things about the universe, but we could look for more details if it is about the seen universe, shahada, not al-ghaib. But when he tells us about the unseen, when he tells us about himself, when he tells us about his names and attributes, when he tells us about the Jannah and the Nar, then we will just have to completely accept whatever he tells us, and whatever his messengers tell us about the unseen, about himself, about the unseen. We just accept it while maintaining his transcendence. But there is no real benefit in further investigating the unseen by the intellect, because it does not have that capacity. It does not have that potency. Do you remember the philosopher who said that the intellect, philosophy is really not, the intellect is not qualified, and philosophy is not basically worthwhile in the area of metaphysics. Who is that? Yeah, Immanuel Kant is the one who said that. In the Critique of Pure Reason. And Immanuel Kant is not just any simple philosopher. He's considered the main philosopher in the last 200 years, the greatest philosopher in the last 200 years. And he said, forever we have been talking about metaphysics, and one of the things, keep in mind that he was religious, and he was particularly pious in his practice of religion. He was a pious Christian, Immanuel Kant. So he said that we keep on talking about all of this. Is the mind, is the intellect really equipped to examine the unseen, to investigate the unseen, the metaphysical? And he said it is not equipped. And that's exactly what that's exactly what the Hanbalis have been saying all the time. The mind, just stop. It is, and I shouldn't say the Hanbalis, the Atharis in general. Stop. The mind is this is beyond the mind. You can't really basically reason about this, because it's beyond reason. Just accept it. But accept it while maintaining the transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Accept it while maintaining the transcendence of Allah, and that is also important. Accept it while maintaining, because sometimes people use language that could hurt that concept, the concept of maintaining the transcendence of Allah. We're accepting it because the language itself, the language itself is incapable of describing something that is completely beyond our imagination. But Allah did use that language to basically relate to us, to introduce Himself to us, to make us know about Him. Allah did use that language. So we just accept what He told us, while maintaining His transcendence, and that we will never be able to imagine what He is like, because you just can't. You just can't. What He's exactly like, because you just can't. So that is the way to basira with regard to the unseen. It's just like the complete acceptance while maintaining the transcendence of the Lord. At-tanzih, while maintaining tanzih. Keep the tanzih in mind all the time. Avoid any conceptualization. Avoid any forming of images about the unseen in your mind, because whatever images you form in your mind about the unseen, they're not true. They're not real. Just accept and move on. But it is acceptance for our benefit. It is not acceptance like just accept the letters. فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. Then follow me so that Allah may love you. And accept that Allah will love us. Not just the letters. Accept that He will, in fact, love us if we follow His messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that is basically basira with regard to the unseen. And with regards to the world around us, the universe around us, we could look for some details, we could reason about things, and we could look for, more, we could learn more about history and things like that. Because we do have the ability to do that. But whatever Allah tells us, we just accept it because it is all true. Then what about the other word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? These are the statements of Allah. His words are two types, His statements and His decrees. Sidqan, about the statements, in truth. But what about His decrees? The decrees cannot be described as sidq or not sidq, right? These are commands. So what about the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are two different types. There are the universal decrees, that's called the universal order, the laws of the universe that Allah inculcated in this universe, and the things that happen to you that you are not basically in control of, and that you are not demanded to do anything about or to abstain from anything. You get sick, it's not your fault. We just die. It's not our doing. So we're not demanded to do anything about these things or to abstain from anything. And certainly the universal order. So when it comes to the universal order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basira in this regard is basically it is whatever we talked about before when it comes to the universal order. To have the intuition, to have the capacity and the interest to see through the outer surface. To see through the outer surface and to examine the meanings and to focus on the meanings, the end, the tell us behind the outer surface, and not just be limited to the formal cause or the efficient and material cause, but look for the final cause. So that is people of basira in this regard. And when it comes to the universal order, or also examination of the formal cause is part of basira, exploration, and that is what the Muslims realized, that it does actually help you to be more insightful of the final cause, to have more knowledge about the formal cause. And the disagreement over this is a huge disagreement. إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. Verily, it is the ulama, the knowledgeable ones, the ones endowed with knowledge, the scholars, are the ones who will fear Allah the most. And certainly, the sort of the orthodox understanding of this is that it is the scholars of the deen. But I would argue that it is not limited to the scholars of the deen. Certainly, the people that are endowed with different types of knowledge, the more knowledge you have, if you're thoughtful, the more knowledge you have, the more it will lead you to faith. And certainly, some of the Einstein believed in God. Whether he was practicing or not, whatever he practiced, he may not be your traditional Jewish person that you meet in the street, but he did believe that no, this is huge. There is something behind this. There's something beyond this. So it does lead you to faith, and even philosophy, as we said before, we quoted Francis Bacon before about little philosophy leads someone away from faith, and much more philosophy brings them about back to faith. So إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء, it is not limited to the scholars of the deen, but certainly the scholars of the deen are the core of this. It applies primarily to the scholars of the deen, but it also includes people who are endowed with different types of knowledge. So exploration, and then comes the issue of this exploration. Should we be just exploring physics and math and so on? And that is the problem in the Islamic awakening in general, is that the focus was on exploration when it comes to those hardcore sciences. And we neglected the importance of humanities, the importance of psychology, the importance of sociology, the importance of anthropology, the importance of politics, the importance of whatever else other than just hardcore sciences, math and physics and so on and so forth. No, exploration is not limited to those hardcore sciences. We also need to explore whatever the collective human heritage in those sciences. Certainly, we will use our filters. We're always using our filters. But keep in mind, our filters are not that restrictive. The knowledge of the revelation is not that restrictive. The knowledge of revelation gave us like some guidelines, some signposts, some barricades on the sides of the road so that you don't drift away, so that you don't fall off the cliff. Yeah, it did give us some guidance, but it left us so much room for exploration. It left us so much room to explore the world around us, even to explore ourselves, to know more about ourselves. Part of this is introspection. Part of Basira is introspection. So yes, we will be guided by the knowledge of the revelation, but it does not mean that it restricted us from further exploration. And that is extremely important, and that's like a main failure of the sort of, not certainly everyone, but certainly the predominant direction or the atmosphere within the Islamic awakening, the blessed Islamic awakening of the last 1 century. People thought that we don't need to learn much about humanities. We just need to learn about physics and chemistry, like power and technology and things of that nature. But we don't need to know much about humanities. It is incorrect, and it hurt us so much. So exploration includes all of this. And Basira develops with further exploration into all of those realms while maintaining, while being observant of and cognizant of the guidelines provided to us in the revelation. And now the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will include, in addition to the universal order that we need to explore, the decrees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also include His qadr, whatever the destiny. And we said before that al-basira in this regard is what? Acceptance with gratitude. And I chose I chose to say acceptance with gratitude, not just with submission, because that is the ultimate basira. The ultimate basira is that you have gratitude for Allah in everything. As Imam al-Harawi said last time we talked about it, in that which He withholds, you have as much gratitude for Him for that which He withholds, just as much as for that which He gives and grants, because you don't know what is better for you. You may dislike a thing, and therein there is so much good for you. So al-basira, when it comes to kalimatu rabbik, the word of your Lord, concerning the decrees, the destinies, is to have complete acceptance with gratitude all the time, and be grateful to Allah for what He does. So that is basically basira in kalimatullah. وتمت كلمة ربك صدقا وعدلا لا مبدل لكلماته وهو السميع العليم. The word of your Lord has been fulfilled in truth and justice. There is no alteration. No one will alter His words. وهو السميع العليم, and He is the all-hearing, all-seer. Divide this, and it is in the document that I sent you. Divide this into what the kalima is, what the word of Allah is. His statements are all true. His decrees are all just and orderly. His statements are about the seen and the unseen. His decrees are about destiny, universal order. And if you divide this and reflect on each one of those categories and how to develop basira in each one of those categories, you will have basira in all of those different realms. Then the Sheikh said, Ad-Darajatul Ula, and inshallah we will not be late, because many of these things we have gone over before, many of these concepts we have gone over before, but we said that the overlap does not mean it's complete overlap. There are certain differences between all of those stations. The Sheikh said, الدرجة الأولى أن تعلم أن الخبر القائم بتمهيد الشريعة يصدر عن عين لا يخاف عواقبها فترى من حقه أن تلذه يقينا وتغضب له غيره. الدرجة الأولى, the first level, أن تعلم أن الخبر القائم بتمهيد الشريعة يصدر عن عين لا يخاف عواقبها, is to know that the reported instructions of Sharia come from certain sources and have guaranteed consequences. Come from certain sources and have guaranteed consequences. فَتَرَى مِنْ حَقِّهِ أَن تَلَذَّهُ يَقِينًا وَتَغْضَبَ لَهُ غَيْرًا. Thus you satisfy the rights by finding genuine pleasure in them and being fiercely protective of them. So you satisfy the... So you see that the instructions of the Sharia, the first level is usually about the Sharia, because the Sheikh is a Sharia compliant Sufi. He is a Sunni Sufi. So he starts always the first level with the foundation. If you don't have that foundation, if you're not compliant with the knowledge of Sharia, then don't follow me. You gotta start here. And then to follow me to the second level, to follow me to the third level, you got to be established first in the first level. You've got to have the knowledge of Sharia, and you've got to comply, to conform to the knowledge of Sharia. If you're not going to be with me and here, stop, move away. Just like mind your own business. Don't come. Our path, as Junaid said, is a path of compliance with Sharia. Is a path of knowledge. Whoever is not interested in the knowledge of Sharia and does not want to comply with the knowledge of Sharia should not follow us, should not be with us. He's not from us. So that's why the Shaykh always starts in the Daraja al-Ula, in the first level, by his talk about the Sharia and the knowledge of Sharia. And he says that this knowledge comes from certain sources. Like, be very confident about it. This came from a messenger that established his truthfulness beyond any reasonable doubt. This came from a messenger who established his truthfulness beyond any reasonable doubt. So be certain of what you have between your hands here. and they have guaranteed consequences. The consequences, al-wa'd wal-wa'id, al-wa'd wal-wa'id, the promises and the warnings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are all guaranteed. You know, whatever reward you've been told of, whatever punishment you've been told of, these are guaranteed things. So be aware of that. And if you know that they come from certain sources and they have guaranteed consequences, remember we said yesterday, when it comes to the dunya, there is nothing guaranteed. من كان يريد العاجلة عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء ولمن نريد ثم جعلنا له جهنم يصلاها مذموما مدحورا. Whoever wants the quick passing life of this world, عجلنا له فيها ما نشاء لمن نريد. We will advance to them whatever we please, to whomever we please. No guarantees. You want the dunya, we will give it to you, but there are no guarantees. We may not, you know. So we will give to whomever we please, whatever we please. But when it comes to the hereafter, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ الْآخِرَةَ وَسَعَى لَهَا سَعْيَهَا وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَأُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ سَعْيُهُمْ مَشْكُورًا. And whoever wants the hereafter and does the works that are basically that suit that pursuit or their desire for the hereafter, for those people, their work, their effort will be accepted with gratitude, will be rewarded with gratitude, will be rewarded with gratitude. Guaranteed, no question about it. So he says that these are guaranteed consequences. If you know this, then you see فَتَرَى مِنْ حَقِّهِ أَنْ تَلَذَّهُ يَقِينًا وَتَغْضَبَ لَهُ غَيْرًا. Thus you have to satisfy the rights of these instructions by finding genuine pleasure in them. Finding genuine pleasure in them. تَلَذَّهُ يَقِينًا. And that is something that you develop over time. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And those who strive in our cause, we shall guide them to our path. That is something that you develop over time. But keep in mind, you have it. You already have it. If you came here, there is something, you know, that you find comfort in listening to, you know, Imam al-Harawi and Imam al-Qayyim, Imam ibn Qudama rahimahullah. If you already have a lot of this pleasure, a lot of this sweetness, you have it. We have different degrees of it. We have different degrees of it. But the believers, the practicing believers, they do have some of it. That is why it is even just like scientifically proven that faithful people have better health, you know, they live longer and they have better health and so on and so forth. So you are getting some of that for sure, but there is more to get. There is more to be had by getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَغْضَبَ لَهُ غَيْرًا. And to be fiercely protective of them, fiercely protective of these instructions, the bounds of Allah, the hudud of Allah. وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ. Whoever honors and glorifies, venerates the hurumat of Allah, the sacred bounds of Allah, it will be good for him before his Lord. Then the Shaykh, so after the Shaykh established the importance of the knowledge of Sharia and the importance of compliance with the Sharia, then he moves on. But when he moves on, and whatever he says may sound that, you know, to basically take you away, no, he's not taking you away from compliance. He's telling you about more that you can have. He's not taking you away from compliance. He's not being mystic-like in bad mysticism. He is basically alerting you to the importance of more devotion. You're compliant now. I want you to be more devoted. You know, work on, you know, the final qualifier, the ultimate qualifier, which is devotion. You remember yesterday we said what? We said someone who is born in Mecca and goes to the Haram, a couple of prayers a week will be like your prayers in terms of reward for a few years, right? If he prays, you know, twice a week in the Haram, you're done. You know, you can't compete. But could that really be true? No, we said that the ultimate factor here that will define people's rankings will be devotion. because the reward for the devotion, multiplication for devotion, is not limited by numbers, is it? Is it limited by numbers? 100,000 prayers, or 1,000 prayers, or 500 prayers. It is not limited by number. So devotion, Allah rewards for this without reckoning, without numbers. So now when he goes to the second and the third level, that is what he's trying to do. Now that you're compliant, try to be more devoted and more sincere. He says, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّانِيَةُ أَن تَشْهَدَ في هداية الحق وإضلاله إصابة العدل وفي تلوين أقسامه رعاية البر وتعاين في جذبه حبل الوصل. Okay, الدرجة الثانية, the second level is to observe في هداية الحق وإضلاله إصابة العدل. To observe the justice in the true ones. Al-Haq is the truth or the true one, which is Allah. And to observe in the justice in the true ones, guiding and misguiding. Whenever he guides, it is out of his favor and grace. Whenever he misguides someone, it is out of his justice. It is out of his justice. وَفِي تَلْوِينِ أَقْسَامِهِ رِعَايَةَ الْبِرِّ. His graciousness in his distribution. تَلْوِين أَقْسَامِهِ, the variation in his distribution. He apportions things, in ways that we do not comprehend sometimes. That's why some people who have lack of understanding, there is like a very bad proverb in Egyptian one. يدي الحلق للي بلا ودان. He gives earrings to those who have no ears. So when you, it's basically, and certainly people say this not meaning to, they don't understand. They're not meaning to defy, or to be disrespectful towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're just people who are resentful about their shares, their portions of the dunya. You see someone who may not be as handsome as you, for instance, and they have a lot more money, or they may not be that intelligent and they have a lot more fame and celebrity, or they may not be that knowledgeable. Like Ibn Hibban said, some of the people that get, that become a'immat al-huda, they have little knowledge and they become a'immat al-huda. They become, the most distinguished imams, and with little. Certainly it's not going to be that little, but with much less knowledge than other people who have a lot more knowledge, and no one knows anything about them. So when you see things of that nature, don't become envious, don't become resentful, don't become you should not. He apportions these shares in the dunya as he pleases, not as you please. And you must trust his wisdom, and you must trust his justice, and accept that as a manifestation of his perfection and his glory. And you don't know why this person became famous and you did not. But then to say that he gives earrings to one who has no ears is basically blasphemous if you understand what that means. But certainly for people who don't understand, and people are not that thoughtful anyway, a lot of people are not that thoughtful, inshallah, Allah will forgive them. But it is important to see وَفِي تَلْوِينِ أَقْسَامِهِ رِعَايَةَ الْبِرِّ, his graciousness in his distribution, not only his justice, but his graciousness, because he knows what he's doing. And he's gracious in his giving and his withholding. And you should always maintain that image of your Lord, or that perception of your Lord. وَتُعَايِنَ فِي جَذْبِهِ حَبْلَ الْوَصْلِ, and to be able to observe in his pulling, جَذْبِهِ فِي جَذْبِهِ, in his pulling, حَبْلَ الْوَصْلِ, the rope of friendliness, which means here to observe friendliness in his pulling. He pulls you towards him, he brings you closer to him. If he does bring you closer to him, if he allows you to stand before him in prayer, if he allows you to do something that's good, if he allows you to be kinder, if he allows you to be more thoughtful, if he allows you to be more charitable, if he allows you to be, if he brings you closer to him, it means that he desires. It means that he desires your nearness. He wants you closer to him because he desires your nearness. So to be able to see in his pulling, his friendliness. وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّالِثَةُ بَصِيرَةٌ, and the third level is insight. بَصِيرَةٌ تُفَجِّرُ الْمَعْرِفَةِ وَتُثَبِّتُ الْإِشَارَةَ وَتُنْبِتُ الْفِرَاسَةَ. The third level is a basira, is an insight that causes ma'rifah, gnosis, to gush forth. And I did choose to use gnosis, and sometimes, because when we talk about gnosis, Gnostics and so on, it could sometimes be tricky, but I mean here by gnosis, whatever the original definition of the word. And the original definition of the word is the beneficial knowledge, the knowledge of the heart, the knowledge that produces the desired effect. It's the knowledge of the heart that produces the desired outcome that is beneficial, that causes the fruits, the trees of virtue in the heart to bring forth their fruits. Not every knowledge does that. Information per se would not do that. Gathering information, collecting information, memorizing them does not produce that, will not produce that, unless you have sincerity and devotion and you really want this information. And you really want to benefit from this information before you basically use it for any other purpose. So تفجر المعرفة causes معرفة or gnosis to gush forth. وتثبت الإشارة, and ratifies the gestures. Ratifies the gestures. Gestures, ishara, usually in Sufi terminology, they talk about ishara. Ishara is different from ibara. Ibara is the expression. But ishara is whatever it is that you cannot verbally express. And ishara sometimes, it's not only that whatever you cannot verbally express. For many people, the ishara is sufficient. They don't need ibara. So sometimes it's for the people who have this ma'rifah, for al-arifin, the Gnostics, the people who have this ma'rifah, ishara is sufficient for them. They don't need verbal expressions. Jesus need gestures. Ishara could also refer to internal feelings and internal conditions, internal states that cannot be expressed. You can't really tell the people about them. You can't tell sometimes the sweetness of faith. Well, tell me more about this. If you talk to someone who is atheist, for instance, well, describe to me, that sweetness. What do you mean by this? They think that you're completely sort of deluded. Think it's all, you're happy, it's probably because of neurotransmitters in chemistry. The chemistry of your brain is making you happier. You don't know what you're talking about. So for some people, ibara, if they don't understand these things, the ibara would not even make them understand it. And certain things are by experience. You have not seen it. If you have not experienced it, you will not be able to appreciate it. And that's fine. But it ratifies the gestures does not only mean that, it means that whatever it is, that whatever state that you're in, and whatever concept and whatever state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows on you, an understanding or state or something, your basira will ratify it, meaning it will groom it, make it in accordance with the Sharia and groom it and anchor it in the heart. Groom it and anchor it in the heart. So it becomes a permanent state, not a transient one. So you could capture it. you could capture this thought and anchor it in the heart. You could capture this feeling and anchor it in the heart. You could capture this state and anchor it in the heart. And it's not any more transient, but rather fixated in the heart. And then the final one is وَتُنْبِتُ الْفِرَاسَ, and yields astuteness. And firasa is our next chapter, inshallah. Yields astuteness. That's the spiritual astuteness, the power of the power of sound prediction, and being able to tell people apart and things and different phenomena. So that spiritual astuteness is what al-firasa means, and we will discuss firasa in detail next time, inshallah. Therefore, we will stop here. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.